This is a response to Graffight. Thank you for responding to my earlier video. I found the community here extremely receptive and welcoming. It's been easy for me in that sense to acculturate to this environment. What I like about both you and Noah is that you have a certain sense of humility about what you're doing. This is something a lot of apologists appear to lack. It's a sense of struggle that you have with these questions. Instead of just reciting a speech over and over again, you seem to really actually be grappling with what people are throwing at you, and that is always appreciated. It makes it easier to listen to you and makes a more genuine understanding of the material.
Hey, how's it going, Mr. Payton? I'm gonna go ahead and make a video to try to attempt to answer some of the questions that you had and defend the position. Well, not necessarily defend the position of divine command theory, because I think it's wrong as it's stated. But to kind of just respond to some of the criticisms you had for William Lane Craig in this video.
I tried to make this as explicit as possible, that my criticisms are leveled at divine command theory. I have really no consideration of whether Dr. Craig did or still does to endorse this theory. That matters very little. The problem is that he is explicitly endorsing this position in that particular podcast, and that he uses it to justify an atrocity.
The first thing we have to understand is what God's goal is. Let's face it, morality has never been about the actions that one's taking, but the reason that they take it.
I can't help but make the historical point that many people think that ethics is largely to do with consequences and actions. For instance, consequentialists believe that all that matters is the consequence of the action, that intentionality matters very little. The other primarily dominant theory is deontology, which is more about your duty to follow certain rules that are based on reason. Another would be virtue ethics, which tries to create the best possible person through appeal to certain characteristics. None of these actually have to do with intentionality the way that you put it. It seems that this is the type of thing that Dr. Craig says, but actually isn't really borne out by the recorded history of ethical theory and morality.
For example, the act of killing someone is an amoral action, but we look at the reasons to see if the action itself was good or bad. So if I kill someone simply to take their money, then we can say that that's a bad action. Conversely, if I kill them because they're about to torture my daughter, then it's good. The action of killing was the same in both instances, but it's the intent behind the killing that makes it right or wrong. So the question here becomes, did God have a morally justifiable reason for killing the people in the Old Testament? Dr. Craig and I would both say that he did, and I've come to this conclusion for a few reasons. First, God seems to be moving towards a goal. His goal seems to be the salvation of humans. This is the greatest thing that humans can hope for, and ultimately the best thing for us.
Even if I were to grant to you that ultimate salvation is the best thing that all of humanity has to hope for, it would still leave open the ethical questions of the means by which we get there. God immediately goes into killing people in order to achieve this goal, and this doesn't make sense to me because I understand God as being omnipotent. I understand him as having the power to do anything. So I think he is duty-bound, if he has the power to move these people out without having to kill them. For instance, couldn't he have made all of the land of Israel smell bad, in which case the people could leave of their own accord? Or couldn't he have appeared in the sky and achieved not only the goal of asking them to leave and having them actually do it, not killing anyone, but also leaving open the possibility, at least, that these Canaanite people don't have to burn for eternity in hell? You're leaving out incredibly important parts of this problem.
Consider our interaction with each other. We interact with people at different ways at different stages in their development. While as a parent, I may use capital punishment or spankings to teach my child not to play with knives or to change the behavior of running into the middle of the street, I wouldn't necessarily use the same tactic on an 18-year-old or a 25-year-old. Given this principle, would it be fair to assume that God may work in a similar way with humans? When humans were younger as a society, it may have been necessary to kill people or to expect adherence to certain laws that are unnecessary in an older society.
I'm going to say that your example of comparing the spanking of a child to the obliteration of a society is pretty disanalogous. Primarily because the metric is wrong. That you're saying that it could be in the ultimate good for a child further down the road that they would eventually learn an important lesson that is unavailable to them in their premature development. But this is different than killing a person for the following reason. Individuals were killed and individuals went to hell. Humanity is not a particular individual. Individuals require their own rights and their own responsibilities, and most importantly, their own judgments that should be fair and equal to all people. To treat humanity as if it were a single entity analogous to a child, I think is a pretty bogus picture of what justice should be. Why is, for instance, the possibility of my salvation, which happens thousands of years after the Canaanites, more important than their salvation or their well-being? I think there's a massive amount of moral equivalence going on here that I'm entirely uncomfortable with.
What would have happened if God had let those that he killed in the Old Testament live? Would letting those people live lead to less salvation for humanity? If God is all-knowing, is he better equipped to answer these questions than I am? And if God is all-loving, is it possible that he made the best decisions?
Your theory, insofar as I understand it, Graffight, is that although certain things can seem proximately bad from our present perspective, that ultimately God will know that it is good, and eventually and ultimately there will have great consequences for things that seem proximally horrifying. Now, I find this view very problematic, because I think regardless of the fact that I only see part of the picture for any of these actions, that I nonetheless have obligations to do the best I can under those circumstances. Even if my information isn't perfect, I should be able to at least approximate a guess of what is right and wrong. And I think what divine command theory does is take that rational capability out of the hands of humanity. It says that the ultimate justification, what is ultimately good or bad, lies outside of the range of rational discourse, is beyond the scope that human beings can hold. And I think that robs us of the ability and the motivation to do the right thing, to make the world a better place, and ultimately to act as rational, ethical beings.
As a Christian, there's absolutely no reason for me to believe that God would tell me or anyone else to kill people. He doesn't seem to interact with us that way anymore. All that stuff ended pretty much with the death of Jesus in the New Testament. Christians are no longer under the Old Testament law or Mosaic law. And nowhere in the New Testament does it tell us that we should be killing anyone. As a Christian, there's absolutely no reason for me to believe that God would tell me or anyone else to kill people. He doesn't seem to interact with us that way anymore. All that stuff ended pretty much with the death of Jesus in the New Testament. Christians are no longer under the Old Testament law or Mosaic law. And nowhere in the New Testament does it tell us that we should be killing anyone. When I make this point, many atheists like to bring up the Matthew 5:17 through 19 in an attempt to refute what I just said. And that's the route, if that's the route that you want to go, we can talk about that, but I'm not going to straw man.
I'm glad, because the actual verses I'd like to bring up are Acts 10 verses 10 to 14. This is where Peter is given a banquet from heaven that instructs him to eat flesh of unclean animals. Now, this is important because this actually violates the laws of Deuteronomy and Leviticus, and is actually the center around a contemporary schism in the Church of England, the Anglican or Episcopal, as you say, in the United States. Now, how exactly are we supposed to read this passage? Are we supposed to read it as only applying to food, or does it also apply to any of the laws that were found in Leviticus and Deuteronomy? That's the debate that's happening. What I find problematic about appealing to the Bible for ethical solutions is not only are they largely irrelevant, but I also think they're unhelpful in satisfying the needs of current ethical debates. I look forward to your response, Graffight. Thank you very much for responding to me.